this man for up. This is Yun Yang. This man is the former chairman of the Bank of China. This man, they convict him 2 days back. What happened? This man, they give loan to some companies. Then they go give us some money. Then he will come recover the loan, just sort of cover some things for them. What it go happen when China government know? They sentence him to death imprisonment.
The guy is trying to make a comparison between a case that happened in China and an ongoing case in Nigeria.
Now, after that death imprisonment, they come put and say, he still get chance, like at the Court of Appeal for Nigeria. Say, after 2 years for inside prison, if they see behavior say he can't do well, they'll go remove the death penalty, they'll go give him life imprisonment. Now, this man now that they convict to death, where he said the last John in a life imprisonment, you know how much he carry? $16.8 million US.
And you could already sense his levels of anxiety and the levels of pain he ordinarily is experiencing.
Not be say he just carry the money. Oh. Now the ones who be, like that. Then they convict this man to death. The second one, if a big grant anything, it will be life imprisonment. Now, may we bring out to White Lion, Yahaya Bello, where the also is the same. You see the man with the brother with the eye glass. Like person don't fit kill mosquito. You dey see this man. Then may we go check how much this Chinese man carry where they want killer. Then we go check where Yahaya Bello carry. This man I carry Kogi State money. This same man, this man a real White Lion. Now this same man they sue EFCC. Now how much this man carry? $154 million US.
The comparison down here is chilling.
Now, break that money to where did this Bank of Chinese man carry. If you break the money, they go break out to like more than 15 places. Now this man carry where they sentence her to death.
And I understand the place of frustration where the complainant and the analyst down here is coming from.
Imagine the country. So we don't see this country. This country and country be said they hold thieves said they hold. That's why they hold land. Instead called they drag EFCC, called sue EFCC. Imagine the kind of court where they go sue. They go sue EFCC. That's why they say may fight crime. Oh. If they fight crime, you get proof. And the EFCC don't get proof. Because you get proof. Now you can see the that's why they hope. Where suppose they think I go take proof. Now you can't even see they sue them. You see this country, it don't talk cruise.
These type of cases are not cases we have not heard or even seen in a place like Nigeria. When you read A Paradise of Maggot, you come to understand the battles and the confusions that led to the formation of the EFCC, that's the Economic and Financial Crime Commission in Nigeria, and the tax placed before it, and how someone like Nuhu Ribadu emerged as its first chairman, and how his life almost got snuffed out of him, leading him to make the claim that
when you fight corruption, it fights back. Corruption fights back. Nobody fights in stages. First, they will try to compromise you, give you the money if you want. If you fail, if you refuse, if you are able to resist, then you will be a target of destruction. It happened to me all. If you are not lucky, you will lose your life. It happened. But I am grateful. I survived.
When you fight corruption, corruption fights even harder. The events that were recorded in the book and the demonstrations that made use of the song Yahoo, oh, oh, Yahoo, that's Yahooze, that was sung many years ago, come to tell you of the deep-seated levels of corruption on the one hand, but you also come to understand the pain of this man as well as the pain when you read such a book, and when you even read a book also written by David Hundenyi, you come to see that indeed there's a breaking point, and it leaves you with this sense of despair. It leaves you with this sense of confusion as to the many complaints the man down here is asking himself. Nigeria go still better so. That is, can Nigeria ever still be good? Can Nigeria be better? Can the man on the streets come to really benefit from the dividends that ordinarily is supposed to be democracy? And I remember Father Onwukike of Abakaliki Diocese and his book, The Dividend of Democracy, and going through the book, you come to understand how far we have We have deviated from what we ordinarily are supposed to do as a people, from what we ordinarily are supposed to tell ourselves, because for God's sake, the country has been in a very, very difficult place for many reasons. The country has been suffering from many situations and many events that ordinarily should warrant every well-meaning Nigerian to come to think about ways of ordinarily coming to solve the problem. Just that the problem here is we don't really even see ourselves as Nigerians. We don't see ourselves as one. We don't even see ourselves as in need of help. And I'm saying this from a general perspective and falling to the hands of generalization. And you come to understand my pain and my anger when you go into the streets of the country and you come to meet different people, talk about different problems and bring about different postulations as it concerns why they are suffering. And many persons don't even come to even understand why they are suffering and why they're suffering in the land and why that shouldn't be so. A thing that reminds me of Bantu Steve Biko and his whole idea of black consciousness, the idea that the black man, the black woman is not unawares of his pain and his suffering, just that such group of persons lack the consciousness to know that such a pain is not needed. We have come to live with this idea that we can manage, Niger spirit, no the break, Niger no they carry last. And so you find us turning around this circle over and over and over again. A circle that sees us kill ourselves, a circle that sees us die without almost anybody coming to save us. And so the level of destitution you get to see on the streets, the level of destitutions you get to see in different homes, and the level of insecurities you get to see on the eyes of children and the eyes of young lads leaves you with shivers, because you get to see within them the fear of even speaking out, the fear of speaking up to power. How do you want to do that if the likes of Dele Farotimi can be maltreated the way he was maltreated and the way he continues to be treated with hostility? Who then am I to almost ordinarily want to speak up? These are the things you get to see amongst people, and you get to see how they recoil back to themselves, and then for few what Frantz Fanon will get to talk about the psychology of fear, the psychology of timidity, the psychology of conformity, and their ways of thinking get to ordinarily change. Because tell me, why on earth will we in the 21st century be as criminally minded and as tolerating for criminals as we in the 21st century have come to be? It's all born out of fear. It's all born out of the fear to speak up to power, the fear to tell people what we ordinarily should tell them about their life and about the ways in which they shouldn't govern their life and the ways they ordinarily should go. But at the heart of all of this issue is the law. The law in the country is so porous. The laws that govern the land in Nigeria is almost written along the line as litigations come in and as judgment get passed and as things get to unwind and as people get to see things turn out in their lives. So you find someone like David Hundeyi tell us about the fact that laws are not really made in the country. The laws can be exploited by almost anyone. And so you find someone like Yahaya Bello suing EFCC for charges brought against him. And he goes the way he goes, and what happens? We almost tend to forget about the situations that ordinarily bring people like this to our consciousness, and you can only help but imagine how life ordinarily has been for the people of Kogi, the state where this man is said to have been governor for 8 years. Many persons consider him a young man when it comes to becoming a governor in a place like Nigeria, but he was already advanced in age when he became governor, and he became governor also by chance. And whatsoever he has done down there is just proof to the fact that we need laws, and we need laws to guide us. And I know the fear and the pain that comes with a thing like surveillance, a thing like too many laws and too many rigid barriers as to freedom of expression here and there. And somebody that comes to mind here is Michael Foucault and his idea of we being surveyed and the different levels of governmental engineering and societal engineering that have come into play to get to see us get to live life. But what has to be said has to be said. We live in a society at the moment that categorize things between the levels of moralities, the different stratas of right and wrongs, and the different conceptions of good and bad and evil. And we have to make do with what we have within our culture and tell ourselves that for the longest period of time, we have been ruled by the worst set of people. We have allowed ourselves to be governed by people who ordinarily are not deserving of the office they tend to occupy. Whether they're elected or they're selected or they force themselves down there, it is to our own fault to a large extent that we just pretend to be so docile and pray and hope on God that things ordinarily will get to change. Because tell me why on earth we get to elect the people we get to elect? What are the levels of our education, and how far can we continue suffering before we ordinarily come to understand that a place like Nigeria is in dire need of good people who will govern them, people who would really look at the interests of the country, who will look at the interests and the role such a country have to fulfill in a place like Africa, and by extension in the world. Leaders of the world go to meetings and think of how to do different things and how to put up with different realities, and they make sense of their existence and they make sense of the existence of their people, and they try to have meetings that will get to favor them. If you're talking about the G7, the conversations had there is for their own interest. If you're talking about staging different charity organizations and different aids around the world, it is for their own good. They're not doing it solely for charity. They're not doing it solely for we to just get to benefit from whatever they do. They do it with lots of things in mind. For example, take the Lobito plan in Angola, and you get to come to understand why the American government is investing so much in such a project, and the project has little or no contact with the communities. It has little or no contact with the neighboring countries. It still has this colonial mentality when they were envisaging the contract, and up until now it's still being carried on in that particular regard, and little or no agitations are being put up here and there, because it's like from the extraction point down to the point of departure, that is the port. And it is typical of what you ordinarily get to expect from a colonial master, from a colonial government. And it takes you to ordinarily get to see that they are currently doing you a disfavor. And it's not about just money and just about getting railways and getting this. At the heart of this, what are we doing? We claim not to have data. We claim not to have a time. We claim not to be so concerned about the things that happen within our environment. But look around you and see to it that there's never a decision that is being made nor taken that is not made and taken in relation to what ordinarily would get to affect you one way or the other. Is it the whole idea of the politics being played around our environment and around our political scene? Or the ways in which we get to go to school and we get to do business and we get to travel and we get to relax and we get to go for vacation for those who get to go for vacation? Or is it the ways in which we get to worship and the ways we get to interact with one another from an ethnic standpoint to a tribalistic standpoint on the other level? Or is it the way we make appointments in a place like Nigeria? Is it the way we come to interpret the law and the way we interpret corruption and the way we interpret arrests made of certain persons as opposed to the arrests made by the other set of persons? Why are they arresting my brother? Is he the only one stealing money? It don't reach our turn now to thief. They say make we no thief. Why they go do that kind of thing? It don't reach our own turn now to look at life differently. They say, now we don't thief money. They don't go leave our brother when our brother thieving own money where we want thief. These are many more the type of complaints we get to hear many times. Or you want to talk about the whole idea of local government of origin and how useless you can be without almost getting to fall back to your local government of origin for the longest period of time, or how you can almost not get a federal government job if you don't fall back to your local government or to your state of origin to get employed down there and pushed to the federal level or whatever that means. As opposed to the fact that I can grow up in the north, school in the north, be born down there, even have my children down there, get a home there, get to find myself in that particular location because the constitution of the country has granted me the chance to live wheresoever I want to live within the territorial bounds of the nation called Nigeria, as opposed to we championing these tribalistic sentiments that we get to do over and over and over again. Or you want us to talk about the many persons that have died, the roads scattered across the different parts in Kogi, while Yahaya Bello was a governor and while a whole lot of other persons were governors. From Nsukka to Lokoja, you know how long you get to spend on the road before you actually bust your way. Either you're going to Kaduna or you're going to Abuja or you are going to Nasarawa. You come to understand how a thing as simple as implementing projects that are geared towards human development and the build-up of society can ordinarily be. You look at the ministries of transport and you ask yourself, what are the transportation systems they are bestowing? You look at the Ministry of Health and you ask yourself, what levels of health are they bestowing when a place like Bafan don't have a hospital till today, till tomorrow, till next week, till next year? When a place like Okonde is still suffering from stable supply of doctors and nurses to ordinarily cater for the people's need. Or you want to talk about security, and you talk about the police stations scattered across the countries with no police officers well armed with their necessary ammunition to ordinarily get to see to it that the society is governable and is livable, and people always falling back to the hands of God. You want to talk about the levels of kidnappings going on in a country like that have led to the current back and forth between different countries telling their people not to come to a place like Nigeria, as such a thing like tourism is suffering. How can there even be tourism in a place like Nigeria and effectively done so and available to the common man when the levels of corruption and the levels of injustice are so wild and the margins are so far apart? How do you even want to even start thinking about a country that ordinarily can work when things are not even done the ways in which things ordinarily were supposed to be done? How do you want to live in a country like that? How do we even live in a country like Nigeria at the moment? And here I am not just in and about just complaining and blabbing. I am saying this because when you earn in the naira and you earn as few families get to earn, that is if they even get to be paid at the end of the month, you come to understand the fact that the problems are endless. The challenges are very dear, they are very important, and they have not been given the necessary attention they ordinarily should be given. Because tell me how somebody gets to earn 60, 70,000 naira in Nigeria and wants to claim to live life well. How do you live well with such amount of money? How do you cope with such amount of funds? How do you live life to start with such amount of money in a month? You have to pay your children's school fees. You have to pay for transportations. You have to pay for house rent if you don't have a house. You have to pay for petrol. You have to tackle your bills. You have to cater for your family members. It is unimaginable that people ordinarily go year in, year out in Nigeria and survive without really thinking about them as the poor folks in Dostoevsky's Poor Folks. And if you look at his analogy and the way he gets to talk about the people down there in his old Serbia-Russian relationship and reality at the time he was writing, you come to juxtapose that with a place like Nigeria and you come to tell yourself that I don't really see the difference in the things Dostoevsky was talking about and the current reality we are having. And we might even be having a worse situation than we ordinarily want to admit. If you look at the Algerian chronicles of Albert Camus, the French Algerian philosopher, writer, and journalist, you come to see in the first two essays on destitution how he describe the people he ordinarily was sent to investigate in the time he wrote the articles, and you come to see that things have not really changed so much in our world, and things can get better at the same time. Because if you look at the Algeria of Albert Camus' time, and you look at their relationship with France, and you look at their current ties, and you look at their current existence, you can relatively say here and there something has changed, but it still holds sway to say it can get better. Has the Algerian people cut off completely from their ties with France? I don't know. Jean-Paul Sartre had his takes on what ordinarily should be the relationship between France and Algeria. Same thing with Albert Camus. But in the light of the 21st century, we can comfortably say things can get way better than they are at the moment. And the world sometimes needs to be taken by storm and by force and by all levels of determination and by all levels of seriousness. I know it can look daunting, and I know it can look so ambiguous, and it can feel so depressing to talk about a place like Nigeria, but look at all the positive things that ordinarily can come out of the country, and ask yourself if at the moment you are on the right trajectory, you are headed for the right place, and not planning and desiring to be one of those you are currently criticizing. Because whether we like it or not, when Nigeria was experiencing the various levels of corruption it experienced in the days like the days of Chinua Achebe and the days leading after that to Wole Soyinka and to the different persons that came, Yahaya Bello was probably, when was he born? And the many persons also that have come down there to be as corrupt as himself also, when were they born? When you look at that and you tell yourself that it takes a lot to ordinarily get to change a place like Nigeria, and we ordinarily can do more than we at the moment are doing, we come to understand how we ordinarily should go and we should live life. Because tell me why we want change when we currently condone the levels of corruption we currently condone in our personal lives and in the ways we get to do things. For the country to grow, we need all hands to be on deck. We need everybody to forge ahead. We need everybody to stand strong and stand tall and be open to the prospect of doing good and standing right by the country. By so doing, we ordinarily would come to achieve things we at the moment don't even believe we can even achieve. Because when you look at our situation and you look at our life and you look at the ways in which we have come to do things and the ways in which we have not come to do things at the same time, you come to understand the different levels of frustrations we currently find ourselves and how we ordinarily are going to do that and how we ordinarily shouldn't do that and the things we ordinarily must do to come out of our problems. Because we cannot just continue staring at evil and staring at evil and staring at evil and telling ourselves that is in and about the problems of the world and that is how things ordinarily ought to go, and that is where we ordinarily should end our quest and our desires to make the world a better place. We can do more than we at the moment are aligned for ourselves to do. We can stand stronger than we at the moment are attributing to ourselves as the norm where we ordinarily should stand and the things we ordinarily should do at the moment. We can go a bit further, we can push a bit harder, we can gravitate towards the places we ordinarily want to gravitate towards, and we can be all the good things we want to be, but it doesn't just come by mere wishes. That is why I followed religious houses. That is why I followed religious leaders. The idea that you can just speak into being something and it just gets to happen because you just said something. It doesn't work. Action has to go in. You cannot just do incantations and do rituals without ordinarily getting to put in the work. Prayers can be said for all I care for you to become a lawyer. If you don't get to follow the normal procedures to ordinarily see to it that you become a lawyer, you will not become a lawyer. You might have the idea of becoming a priest and you've been told you become a priest and you've been prophesied upon that you become a priest, whatsoever prophecy means and whatsoever you understand as prophecy. But if you don't go to the seminary, I don't see how you want to become a Catholic priest. Or if you don't go to the Anglican seminary, I don't also see how you want to become an Anglican priest. Or I don't see how you become an Orthodox priest if you don't do the things you ordinarily are supposed to do. Same thing as a teacher. Same thing as money, getting money. And I'm just so sick and tired of people telling me about miracle money. Especially the ones that especially the set that will get to tell me that it can be transferred. How do you transfer miracle money? It's a thing I still want to understand. How do you transfer that? How do you transfer miracle money? I don't know. Maybe you tell me. You just stay and then you transfer money without bank codes and stuff like that. And then are we a joke? Are we joking with ourselves? And for how long are we going to continue joking? For how long are we going to continue telling ourselves the lies we ordinarily get to tell ourselves about the ways and things we ordinarily do in the 21st century as opposed to the things we ordinarily shouldn't be doing? And how do we even want to get out of this? We still think in these ways whereby we tell ourselves that one day a mythic ship would come and stop at our harbors and a savior will come down to save us. The different levels of messiahs we ordinarily are looking at, the different levels of messiahs we ordinarily are desiring, the different levels of messiahs we want to come into our lives, and we want them to come to change things, and we want them to come and do things that will ordinarily shake everybody up and change the way things ordinarily are. While it is good to aspire for such messiahs, while it is cool to think about these things, the danger down here is to allow for the gods or for God the things we ordinarily should do for ourselves. It's for us to allow our responsibilities to the place of these messiahs. And history has taught us that messiahs rarely come. Not even Jesus coming to the people of the Hellenistic tradition, that's the Jewish people, was met with the level of enthusiasm that ordinarily should accompany his coming. And many Jews are still waiting for, not many Jews are still waiting for the Messiah. It can be that complicated. The idea that you're waiting for a Messiah and one comes and claims that he's a Messiah with anecdotes and allegories tied here and there to his person, and you still almost will not come to believe in him, because who is he? How can he just claim that he is the Messiah and the one ordinarily that's supposed to come, as opposed to the different persons out there that still at the moment, as opposed to the other probabilities that can be the case? When you sit down and you wait for messiahs to come help you, rather than taking things into your hands, rather than reading, rather than trying to educate yourself, rather than looking at a place like, let's say, the Asian world, and you tell yourself, look at where they are today, and you don't want to look at the level of bloods that were shed. I say bloods, and I use the plural to represent that, to show you that sometimes the number of persons that die get to ordinarily alter how we get to pronounce things and how we get to say things. The number of persons that died in the agitation that is now Asian history would get to shock you. The levels of exploitation that happened within the Chinese Empire and the fall of the last dynasty at the beginning of the 20th century would come to leave you in shivers. When you look at the West and you tell yourself, my country is not doing so well, look at the West, and you fail to realize that things like slavery, things like colonialism, things like occupation of lands and the dispossession of people ordinarily contributed to the current wealth and current stability these persons are having at the moment. You would not come to see how things ordinarily shouldn't be the way they ordinarily are. When you fail to realize that the problems in the world and the so-called wealth in the world are born out of the exploitation of a whole lot of persons, to a large extent, you come to just blame your government and blame your government alone. But why shouldn't we blame our government if the government of other countries are thinking 30, 40, 50, 60 years into the future? Why are we just thinking about drinking and eating and partying? Have you been to the presidential villa? I have been. I don't know about you. And I can tell you for free, it's too much wealth kept in one place. It's too much wealth kept in one place. Spoken to a couple of politicians here and there. I've spoken to a couple of well-meaning Nigerians also at different points in my short life in the world. But what you see as a stark contrast is the fact that it's just too much in one place. And the divide is so wild. The divide is so wild. And sometimes it can leave you questioning yourself and asking yourself, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Is this where I was ordinarily supposed to be born? I understand all the problems that can come with that. I understand the pain that can come with telling yourself these things and wanting to accept these things. But at the same time, I want you to also understand that nothing will change if you refuse to change. Nothing will change if you refuse to tell yourself that the world is ours to possess and our situation can be changed if we want to change our situations. Outside of this, I don't see how a place like Nigeria is ordinarily going to get better. I don't see how a place like Africa is ordinarily going to get the much needed support it needs to stand on its firm foundation. Be it from investments, the likes of the Angolan, the Lobito plan and the railway going down there leading to the port, or the different levels of pseudo projects and aids given to us, either from agricultural aids, seed aids and stuff like that, and the many other things we ordinarily tend to accept from the West, or other well-meaning projects we at the moment are not even giving ourselves the chance to ordinarily look at. I can say for free that our situation would just continue to go down the way they continue to go down, except the well-meaning individuals like you and I get to stand up and tell ourselves that the situation in the country is just so unbearable. The problems in the continent are not beyond us, and we can understand them the moment we are ready to understand them. And we can do all the goods we ordinarily hope and wish to achieve if we ordinarily want to do such. And don't look at it as though we cannot evolve. Don't look at it as though we have an inferior culture. Don't look at it as though we're in a very bad situation that we cannot get out of. Such scenarios get to play out when you talk to a couple of young Africans. They get to tell you that their current problems should be cut off from the past. And I tend to laugh at that. Situation like this was when I was talking about South Africa and the current presence of apartheid on low key and how that still gets to influence and affect the governing structure and the ways in which life is being led in a place like South Africa. And a young lady who happened to have lived in South Africa for a very long time told me, let's let the past be the past and let the present be the present. But how can you talk about the present without the past? How can you come to understand what ordinarily is without understanding what was and what gave rise and what brought the current situation at hand? And so you find someone like G.K. Chesterton get to remind us that when you go to a field and you get to see a gate, you don't just go about destroying the gate. Try to find out why the gate was there in the first place before getting to destroy it. It's a field that doesn't have a fence, but it has gates. And Chesterton is telling us, find out why the gate is in the place it is before wanting to destroy it, before wanting to do whatever you want to do. Find out why that gate is in the current location it is at the moment, and tell yourself, I don't know why this was here, and until I discover that, I shouldn't go about breaking it down. Same thing also with us. We have to read our histories. We have to come to look at our lives and look at them well and tell ourselves the truth, because it is only the truth that can set us free. And that truth starts with our gross level of irresponsibility on our own part, on our levels of laziness on different levels. We've just thrown everything to the president. We just want to elect presidents and we just want to elect these people. And the moment we get to elect them, we tell ourselves, we've elected the president and there goes. Without we telling ourselves that we also owe ourselves a duty. We also owe ourselves a responsibility, and that responsibility comes from taking actions. That responsibility comes from we knowing what we ordinarily are supposed to do and going ahead to do it. We knowing what we must do. This is also a thing Frank Fanon in his works would get to remind us about. Tell the people, tell them that they also have a duty to play. The government is not just there to do their bidding. They also have a responsibility to get to play in the day-to-day achievement of the goals of their society. Rather than just electing people and letting them go their own way and telling them that now you have the affairs of the country, do with it as what you want. And I understand where this is coming from. It's coming from the place of this lack of responsibility and our unwillingness to want to think for ourselves and our unwillingness to want to imagine and envisage our own life and get to see how we ordinarily can live life and live life better. As such, we tell ourselves that let them do the thinking for us. As such, we tell ourselves, let us allow ourselves to chance. Let us allow ourselves to the hands of those people down there, and that is all that get to matter, and that is all we ordinarily should do. That is bullshit, and bullshit in the real sense of the word. No society can grow without its people being involved in the day-to-day events of such a country. And it is only possible to get to grow when you do one or two things to get to better the life of your country. And so why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to get involved? Tell me why you don't want to. I want to understand. I want to get your reasons. Give me your reasoning. Tell me the things that ordinarily is preventing you from being the Nigerian you ordinarily envisage to be. Tell me why you are not law-abiding. Tell me why you don't want to study law. Tell me why you are giving up on education. Tell me why you are giving up on the prospects of advancing yourself and developing yourself. Tell me why you have allowed yourself to believe that education is a scam. Tell me why it is like that. Tell me these things. I want us to reason together. If you have answers, bring them forth. If you don't, why then do you despair? Why then do you just look up to China and you think China has always been China? Have you looked at China 40 years ago? Have you looked at China in the 1980s? And have you come to read what ordinarily a place like that was? When you see Japan and you say Japan is growing, have you really interrogated why it is that the Japanese people are at the moment at the pace they are supposed to your country? When you look at Germany, have you really studied why a place like Germany, a place destined to fail, at the moment is prospering? Have you looked at the amount of debts that God wipes out? Debts the Germans would never get to pay, and how that has led to the current growth in the economy. Have you looked at a place like Belgium? Have you looked at its history in the 40s? And have you looked at the bombings that happened down there? Have you looked at the rage that took place in Brussels, the rage that took place in Louvain, and the different cities that got affected and got occupied just to prevent the invasion of the other side during the war? Have you looked at your own history? Have you looked at the Nigerian Biafra War? Have you looked at the events that took place down there and the problems that ordinarily emanated from such an event in history? Have you looked at the pain many persons still feel and the problems many persons still find difficult to even get to express after such devastating events? Have you looked at our levels of trust as Nigerians, and have you looked at how we barely trust ourselves? Have you looked at how we tend to look the other side when it comes to things that really get to matter? Have you looked at our levels of irresponsibility? Have you looked at how nonchalant we are and how accepting we are of our leaders, of our political guys? And have you looked at how we have come to accept almost everything as opposed to what we ordinarily are supposed to do? Have you looked at how we spend? Have you looked at our levels of spending and the way we get to go about life? Not necessarily being conscious, not necessarily being agitated, not necessarily putting up a resistance where we ordinarily are supposed to put such. Have you really looked at our lives in recent times? Have you looked at our history? Do you even know your history? Do we even know our history? Do we even know the different sanctions that are realities currently affecting the African continent? The AU debate is going on as to who ordinarily is going to chair the association for the longest period of time. And have you looked at the level of sponsorship coming from the EU to the AU, that is European Union, donating to the African Union, and how such donations ordinarily come with their embargoes, and how they come with and how they come with clauses, and how they come with responsibilities. You know, they normally say, "Blessed is the hand that giveth than the one that take," and you want to look at it from another angle. It is in such realization you come to look at the quote, "Do not trust the Greeks and their gift." You get to be told by Homer that Troy burned for days because of the Greeks and their gifts. A place that was not accessible to the Greeks, the Trojan horse granted them a chance in. Why do we want to get so much out of the West in forms of gifts, in forms of incentive, in forms of loans, without ordinarily wanting to work out a mechanism that would ordinarily prevent us from going down that particular path? The answers are not far-fetched. Every government in Nigeria, every government in the African continent that comes into office tries to pay off their debts. And in doing so, they get to tax their people. And in doing so, they get to do a whole lot of things that ordinarily leave them weak. But for how long are we going to continue in this particular circle? Are we not tired of these barbaric circles where we get to see we kill our own selves and we die by our own selves? Why can't we forge a bond as a people, telling ourselves that someone like Yahaya Bello and all the accusations that ordinarily have been made against him should ordinarily come to see to it that justice be served? The likes of the many corrupt persons out there in the country would continue to expand exponentially, geometrically, and in whatsoever proportion they get to do if we don't ordinarily come to look at ourselves and tell ourselves the truth about our existence. And that truth being the fact that at the moment, at the current situation where we find ourselves, we're almost doomed to fail if we don't change the ways we get to do things. And nobody is coming to save us. God is not coming down to do for us what we can do for ourselves. And we close with Augustine. God that created us without us cannot save us without us. I am Biringkpa bin Nemeka, the mendicant. I'm your brother, strolling this world with you.
See, one thing I don't see for this country this year, may we break this thing down. This country that contract this year, if they catch you, say you steal 20,000 jungle justice for Nigeria for you, then Nigeria will kill that person. Then if you there you steal 100,000, the guy you reach court for Nigeria, you'll go life imprisonment. If you steal 100 million for Nigeria, they will give you local government chairman. If you steal 100 billion, they will give you Senate. Then if you steal like 500 billion, you will contest for governorship. That's all the country just be now. So the higher you carry, the lower for your sentence. And the higher you carry, come on, you go carry, people go celebrate you. You go wear white agbada, they still follow EFCC. But if you carry small money, if they uncop you, they go uncop the leg and the hand, enter neck. Come carry baby gun. Then they follow you like this. Carry you go put this IK or say, go remind. Now those people I carry small money, now they stay remind for Nigeria. Where they say, you feel the benefit they remind for 10 years, 15 years, nobody go judge the matter. Then if you carry better money, they go escort you. Now invitation that they give you when you collect better money for Nigeria. They'll invite you. Now you now decide if you will come or not. If you can see decide, say you not like the way they take EFCC they invite you, you fit sue EFCC for that one. And not only suing EFCC, when you sue EFCC finish, then you can go to your social media page and start dancing, dining and whining. Where EFCC go dey court, they wait for you whether you go come or not. And if you not come, any day you decide, say you want come, You feel who they court where EFCC no say you don't reach court. Now you go call them for phone say, hey, don't matter that I'm gonna come. Let's rub my together, let's discuss. Now where the country go that damn nonsense come out for person face. Rubbish. Now know what I do for this country. Una don't know what they do. Until una head correct, now una go do what I do. People will continue looting because when you loot, they celebrate you for looting. That is Nigeria for you. They celebrate looters. A country where they celebrate looters. That is where we find ourselves. Until we do the needful. You see this man now. Anybody will decide for China say he want to take the same step with this man. If you remember the waiting don't hold this man, the person head go correct, he go behave. Then you they look this one. Where people say if they sleep, they wake up, they stroke. They go up there, they shoot gun. They shoot gun for up. Now so want to leave this country. When somebody will carry public form, they will celebrate the person. Nobody from as big as Kobe State can come out and talk. No big lawyer in this country can say, we come out and say something. Nobody. We are just suffering and smiling. And I say, make this country come better. Now like this, it will take better. Smart to say presidency. Now president carry this money. You people better know what you are doing. You people better wake up. Now Buhari carry the money. It was the time of Buhari. Now Buhari carry am. Now one man carry am. But now say Buhari not good. Now say Tinubu not good. Are they the looters? How much president they carry for this country? Compare with the senator they carry, governors they carry, especially governor. If not this country will remove governor, more not the guy governor again. Because then the governor, they just use and say they carry public fund. They don't care what they do. Let's remove governor from this our constitution. Let everybody rest. More no the ones where they thief the money. Not that if you talk with that too.
See you next time.